Hey.
I had a Toque cup, but I went with the venti. Oh, the man, the myth, the legend, Dad.
Nice.
Dad.
Yeah.
Darren's the only grandfather amongst us, yet he's the youngest one.
I don't waste any time. I don't waste any time. I plant my seeds. I got to make sure that my legacy lives on, because
you're like creating franchises. Make sure you could put together like a hockey team if you wanted, really. At this
exactly. Point. And there was a while there where I thought, like, this is great, but now I miss it. It's kind of like the kids are old now. They're out, they're doing their own thing, and I'm sitting around going, what do I do now? So
that's exactly it.
I'm gonna have to take up one of these old man hobbies earlier in life, I guess. So
well, there's always shuffleboard. That's the
it's a we call it curling up here. It's actually
that's true. Yeah, we've all partaken in curling at one point or another in our lives, haven't we?
Yeah. I've tried it.
Yeah, he says it all shamefully.
Yeah. I prefer shuffleboard.
Yeah, I've never played shuffleboard. I can say that.
It's just shuffleboard on ice, isn't it?
It is
pretty much. Yeah, it's like, shuffleboard is more of a bar game, right? With the little rocks on the salted table, but same idea.
Isn't that right?
Cruise ships too. The whatever the name for that thing is.
Oh yeah.
There's a special name for it, and I don't remember what it is, but.
I actually thought that was shuffleboard, but you're saying that one at the bar with the salt on the table, that was shuffleboard?
That's shuffleboard.
That's shuffleboard.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a different take on the same game, I would imagine. So, it's but essentially it all derives from the good old game of curling. So
there you go. Perhaps some bowling in there. I'm not sure how that works, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's also
bocce. What do they call it? Bocce or something?
Bocce ball.
Bocce is awesome.
Lawn bowling. Yeah.
Did you ever get that? Did you ever find that droid that speaks bocce? I know you were looking for a protocol droid.
I know when I said bocce, I was thinking, no, that's Star Wars.
Yeah.
But it is called bocce ball, isn't it?
Yes,
I think so. I don't know.
But it's Italian. I believe it's spelled Bocci. So
that's right.
Bocce. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, how's everybody doing? Shane isn't with us. There's terrible winds happening. Hopefully our guest can be here because he's in the Southern California region. And
what is
Shane
going on down there? Is it just crazy weather, or is it?
It's the winds. The winds are so bad right now that they always preemptively cut power, because a lot of times the power lines will fall over and the transformers will start fires, and all those crazy fires that you see in California, some of them have been started that way.
I always thought the transformers were the good guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Not in this case. Not if they hit the ground.
What about the Decepticons? How's that going to work?
Yeah, all those movies take place in LA, so I'm only assuming.
Yeah, exactly. So are you talking about this? Is it the Santa Ana winds that does that?
It's just like a freak sort of windstorm that I don't think it's the Santa Anas, but anyway, Shane's only 45 minutes from me, and it's really windy here too, but they haven't warned us about cutting our power, although our guest is saying that he might just disappear in the middle of the interview.
And luckily for all of you, I have a lot of prepared spoken word nonsense.
Good.
Yeah.
Some haiku?
Hours and hours. Haikus. All kinds of, all kinds of things.
Lots of dad jokes. Yeah.
Lots of dad jokes. Yeah, exactly.
You guys been following the start of the NHL season, I'm sure.
Yes.
I haven't been following it all. Catch me up on this. What's been happening?
Well, hockey.
I know that.
You're obviously a Golden Knights guy, so you should know that Winnipeg.
By default.
Winnipeg-born Mark Stone is now your new captain, the first captain in Knights history. So
that's right.
Their original draft pick was Cody Glass from Winnipeg.
There you go. Everything's about Winnipeg, Corey. I don't know if you've learned this yet, but when you hang out with Winnipeg guys, everything circles back, and it does somehow circle back to Winnipeg. It's a shocking.
It really
the Jets are 1-1. We blew it, last night against the Leafs, but that's all right.
Mm-hmm. But the Knights are 3-0.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right. That's right.
This could be the year for Vegas. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's been pretty close a couple times, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too is that now. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, where are you guys at with that now? Because we just got new word that our code red is coming to an end this Friday after I don't know how long it's been. So that's actually good.
Really extended. I'm sure California is way locked down. Hey, Corey.
Apparently the numbers are flattening now, so that's good. But yeah, it's still pretty bad here, and but they are vaccinating now. Anybody over 65 can now get vaccinated, and any healthcare workers.
So close, so close.
Yeah.
So close.
So is that just like is it walk-in kind of just, hey, I want to get this vaccination? Like,
You have to make an appointment online. You go to some website in LA vaccination or something, and set up a time, and then you go. But then, of course, you have to do the second one like a month later.
Oh, there's a follow-up. Wow.
Yeah, it's like a two needle thing.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, a double. So it's kind of like any other vaccination, right? It's a 2-part thing. So, well, that's good. Yeah, we are still in obviously high numbers, but they've loosened up because up until now it was 0 people in your house other than family.
Right.
I mean, and to people watching too, because I get this email all the time. I mean, some of the orders online, I mean, yeah, they're a little delayed, and we apologize for that, but understand that you can't buy an envelope right now because it's considered non-essential. So you know what, we're doing our best. Yeah, like you can't buy that stuff. I mean,
wow.
If you want to go to the store and buy an envelope, it's non-essential. So up until now, everything has been deemed non-essential, and we're opening that up. And so we appreciate your patience while we work through this difficult time. So the best way to support these guys is to just kind of stop emailing every day and know that it's just getting out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll get around to it.
Yeah,
we still have T-shirts and stuff, Darren. What do we got?
Yeah, and you know what the problem? And again, I mean, normally we'd be pumping a lot of the stuff, but because it's just not a thing that we can get out and mail out, and I know people like to expect things in a couple of days, but that's just not realistic in this.
Have you had the experience? Because I've been doing this for a million years. It's sort of like someone orders a T-shirt and then like 20 minutes later goes, "Where's my T-shirt?" Have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's always hilarious to me.
Keep in mind that we all grew up in a time period where it's like, oh, a new album's out, so I'm going to go down to the store, I'm going to buy this album, I'm going to bring it home. Well, now it's like, no, everything is, and I mean, we're competing with guys like Amazon, who you'll get it into 2 days, but we're not Amazon, and that's just the way it is. So
no,
I mean,
it's because of the internet and everything else. Everything's sort of like boom. It's either boom or you have to wait a long time. Yeah.
Right. But given the fact that now, and the thing is too, is that, I mean, it's the stay home kind of mentality as well. So, I mean, we're not going out and doing a lot of stuff. So easing up this week. And yes, we will be introducing some cool Valentine's Day specials because, that's our next up and coming.
That's right. So, the Shane Gallows kissing booth again. That's going to be.
That's right. Yeah. It's going to be,
It's a socially distanced kissing booth. So you can make out with your laptop. It's gonna be nice.
Yes, and exactly. These guys. Where's my toque? Where's Darren? Sneak me a hoodie. Yeah, sneaky one. Yeah. Where's my toque?
Who's online right now? Anybody good? I can't. How come we can never see? Only you can tell.
I can see.
He's the boss man.
If you follow the feed, I guess.
How do you do that? How do you do
on
that?
YouTube
Facebook or YouTube
or Facebook? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that means I got to go to my phone. That's too much work.
My friend Kelly Pettit is here. He's from Japan, and he says they haven't got one single vaccine in Japan yet.
Really?
No way.
Yeah.
And I also saw that pretty much Australia is back to like normal now. Is that like, you guys would know, you have probably more friends and connections down there, but is that a thing? Like they're doing concerts and everything now, right? Is that?
Ask Treadwell. He's probably on right now.
Well, it's a little known fact that Vegemite makes you immune to the coronavirus.
Kills the coronavirus.
That's
Vegemite.
right. Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Vegemite. Yeah, solves
everything. Thin
everything.
layer on a piece of toast, and that's all it takes.
What is Vegemite?
Yeah. It's a Australian thing.
Kind of black yeasty spread.
Sort of veggie spread.
Yeasty molasses
topping. Yeah. Yeah. It's an
acquired taste.
We as Canadians all heard that term in the song "Land Down Under" by the Men at Work. He just smiled and made me a Vegemite sandwich.
Sandwich.
Yeah.
And he said,
and we're like, "What the hell's Vegemite?" And then I get there, and they have them on the table, Darren, like, you know, like the small like jams that you get at the diner, like those little plastic jams that'd be like that big. You peel them back. They have Vegemite like that by Heinz and shit. And you're like, whoa, you didn't expect it to be that like normal. It was just like, yeah, it's just what they do.
See, and the song lyric, I mean, you know, as well as I do, probably before that, the internet, when you heard something, you probably just made up whatever made sense to you. So probably wouldn't even have put that together. I mean, you know, all these places, you know, just like Def Leppard. I mean, what the hell is saccharine? You know, like, come on. You know, like, I think people are making up rhyming words now. You know,
yeah.
I think Vegemite in Canada is called Nutella. You know, that's pretty much, you know.
That's
the closest.
Not even close. It's not even close, but yeah, okay. Yeah. We'll go with that.
Well, I mean, that's the only molasses-like spread I can think of up here. I don't eat it as well, but it's
chocolate and hazelnuts.
That's a dessert type item, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, really? I mean, I don't know. They advertise it for people for breakfast. So, but I mean,
there you go. Nutella's awesome.
Yeah,
well, it's like they say, you know, a part of this nutritious breakfast because they put it next to an orange or something, right?
Exactly.
Well, everything's part of a nutritious breakfast if it's next to an orange.
A bowl of Trix, some Nutella on toast. You know,
Labatt's Blue right next to an orange. There you go.
Grapefruit, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Part of a nutritious breakfast.
That's fast. So, I mean, other than that, everything's good. You guys are keeping healthy, safe, doing your thing.
We're alive.
Yeah,
alive and well.
All good here.
So we got a good show. I mean,
really good show.
What can you say about our guests today, other than the fact that, you know, in terms of Canadians successful abroad, I mean, we're talking about, you know, playing with one of the biggest ever, right? So
the first concert I ever attended, he was the first guitar player because they opened the show. So that says something.
Wow.
What concert was that?
Bryan Adams opening for Loverboy in 1983.
Wow.
We were but lads, but yeah, he would have been, you know, he was the lead guitar player in the first act of the night kind of thing. In Saskatoon, Saskatchewan at the Centennial Auditorium. I'm not sure what it's called now, but we played there with Slash once.
So how old would you have been at that point?
I was 37. Do the math.
I was 13. That damn Lanigan water, you know, and just
exactly.
Of youth.
Yeah, it's like, this is all CGI. Corey, you should do the introduction though. You go for it.
Okay, well, I'm so excited. I'm actually a bit nervous because any guitar players out there know this guy is the guitar player's guitar player. He's just known for being so tasty. Everything he plays has a purpose and says exactly what needs to be said and nothing more. He's been with Bryan forever. He's a lifer with Bryan Adams for sure. Super nice guy. Apparently he plays hockey, because my friend Kelly Pettit, who's there, said that he played with him in Burnaby at 8 rinks. So we'll have to talk to him about that. And he's played with another one of our guests that's been on, Jann Arden.
That's right.
So we're going to hear all about these stories from the legendary Keith Scott, everybody.
And you know what? Yes, he's coming on. But I forgot to mention, and I will mention that you know, over the last couple of weeks, yes, we do try to take a lot of viewer comments. So, you know, if you have a question, be patient. You only need to post it once. We'll try to get it addressed. But by all means, let's bring on the one and only Keith Scott.
Hey, Keith.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me, guys.
It would have been really funny if the wind and all that had caused your feed to die, and we just kind of went through all that and you weren't there.
After all that,
just a big staticky box.
Yeah. Oh, that's where Keith would have been. Yeah.
That's actually par for the show here.
Our pleasure. So happy to have you.
This is so exciting.
Thank you. How what have you been doing with your time during all this downtime?
Well, I mean, I just to give you a backstory, we were on tour in Scandinavia in March and starting to hear all the stories about the danger of the health risk and all that. So our first show was in Tallinn, Estonia, and then we went to Helsinki, and the word was we had to go home. So since the first week of March, I've been home and not traveled anywhere, save for a short trip to Joshua Tree Park with my daughter in December, just to have a few days. So
that's literally 10 months ago. I've done the math on this, and I just I'm you haven't been off stage that long in a long time, have you?
There's been parts of our career, like when I moved to the United States in 2008, Bryan went solo, and I didn't really tour with anybody. I play at home every day kind of thing. It's not the same, but I didn't. There's been times where we didn't tour as much. Maybe 2 years of the almost 40 years now working with this guy. So
crazy.
Yeah, and mostly working. We've been lucky to be able to tour around a lot. So
absolutely. I don't know if you heard me talking earlier, but the first concert. I mean, I saw the Irish Rovers. So can we include that? Is that remember the Irish Rovers? But the first real concert now I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail from the Irish Rovers fans. Sorry, fans. But the first real concert I saw in Saskatoon was on the Get Lucky tour, Loverboy, with Bryan Adams opening. And so that was 83. So you were technically the first rock guitar player I ever saw live was you guys. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Centennial Auditorium. And you guys were on fire, because I remember we were only casually aware of Bryan at that point, but I remember just being like, whoa, this guy's like there was a lot of energy in that band in that time, and it was just like no surprise to us that this was going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, that seems so long ago, and funny you mentioned that, because Cuts Like a Knife had just come out, and we started to get a lot more attention, especially over the border, and that's kind of the whole intent of it. And I have to say there was a little bit of rivalry between Loverboy and us, because they were established really well, and I think we were probably flexing our muscles a little to see how we could do. But it's I remember that tour because they weren't happy with a couple of things we were doing. They thought we were stealing some of their show tricks, which there's you guys all know. You go on tour, and there's certain things that are kind of the ritual for a rock and roll show. They're like, okay, put your hands, go whatever. There's things that just kind of happen between you and the crowd, and they wound up being a little bit similar to them, so they didn't like that very much. But
just like objectively, who do you think would win in a fist fight, Bryan Adams or Mike Reno? Everybody. Just kidding. Peace, love, and Vancouver, guys. I don't think we should. No, that would never.
I'm not going to go there, guys.
But if you're saying that they're trying to take credit for the putting your hands together, that's like Gene Simmons trying to trademark this. No,
I wouldn't be that specific. It was really small things, and I think at some point, and I think we talked about this earlier, that everybody kind of knows each other. A lot of the people that worked for Loverboy then are from the prairies, the sound people and what have you, and some of the people that were with us. So it's a small community in Canada that there's people from all across the country that are involved in the business, and it's a short tenure where you run into people. Oh, he used to work for here with us, so you got to be careful who you talk bad about, because they might know.
Of course. Of course, yeah.
And in Mike Reno's case, he's a peace-loving guy, I'm sure. So I don't think he'd want to get involved.
He's the best.
And Bryan's a vegan, so I don't think there'd be much of a fight at all.
Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, but that is the cross that all opening acts carry. Is no matter the stage, the room that you're allowed to perform on is always smaller, and your set time and the lighting, and there's a lot of things that people don't understand when you go to see a band opening for somebody else. There's a lot of stipulations that happen, and if Bryan had stepped out on a certain part of the stage that was meant for what I mean, like that kind of stuff. We've done the tours with Aerosmith, and you're not allowed to go out on that thing, and you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, we've all done that a million times. All these different people we opened it, especially in the first 5 years when you're trying to get established, and there was a lot of rules.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Backstage rules, all that kind of stuff. Brent Fitz has the best touring with Poison stories where you're not allowed to talk to certain girls, but that's another conversation.
I can't even talk about it today.
It's the CC DeVille non-disclosure, right?
Yeah, exactly. He had to sign that thing. It's
so here's the point where we can bring in some of this, because some good questions coming in here. This is something that I didn't know, true or false, I'm not sure, but Keith, maybe you can shed some light on this. Richard has a question for you. You were invited to audition for Kiss in 1982, allegedly. What's the story? Was that true?
Completely false.
Completely false.
Great story, though. Great story.
That is a good story.
Well, I mean, that's why, Richard's asking the question, and that's why, we do these things. So
the funniest thing about that was that would still be makeup days too. So it would have been like Keith Scott being forced into like.
Okay, so that brings on a good question. If you were to have done that, what would your makeup character be?
A lot more amenable than it would be today. So, being so many years younger. So there you go.
Well, they're still doing it. So there you go.
Exactly. But here's one that will be relevant too. So, favorite guitar solo out of all your catalog, and is there a favorite guitar in your collection?
A favorite guitar. Well, yeah, I just held one up that's in the top few for sure.
I think that was before we were live.
I'll explain it. I got a present from my wife when I turned 40, which was some time ago. 1954 Stratocaster as a birthday present, so I treasure that one, and it plays great, and I keep it at home so it stays in one piece, because as you guys all know, instruments just get destroyed out there. I have sweat. I swear it's like battery acid. If it sweats on a guitar, everything just kind of melts, so
wow. I
don't know what it is. My metabolism is active or something. But a favorite solo, I get this question a lot, right? Which favorite song you ever did, blah, 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 blah. And I keep deferring to one song with Bryan, and it's a track, the title track from Into the Fire.
Oh, my favorite. That is my favorite song.
Oh, there you go. So, and I think it might be mine even after all this time. There's been different recordings that I've been pretty proud of, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, but if you record in a traditional way, when I say traditional, a bunch of guys go into a studio on the floor and you track a song, bass, guitars, maybe keyboard, and the singer, whatever. And whatever is on the floor to get the drum track or the rhythm track, if you can save something from that, like the solo you did as an ersatz solo to get you through the song, and that has happened occasionally. And when that does happen, that's to me is spontaneity. And in our case, we always, since I started recording with Bryan, the general sense was you go in as a band, you cut the track, you take, maybe edit together 2 takes that gave it your best possible representation, and you overdubbed some guitars on top of that. Sometimes you actually kept the rhythm track or whatever, but if you kept the solo, that was a big deal. Like, oh, wow. So the solo Into the Fire of that track was off one of the basic tracks. And
no way.
And that to me is like, when I'm a big jazz fan, so when you recorded a jazz like Miles Davis or something, it would go in for one day and they'd do a whole album in one day kind of thing, or 2 days. And it was an audio snapshot of that particular idea, that music, and there was no coming in later. Well, let's say, they never did that. They didn't have any budget, so
no.
I always kind of defer to that. And I like that song specifically because of the mood and the sentiment of it, and what the lyrics spoke of, and the music that went with it. And on top of that, the solo came from the basic track. So I think as the years go on, you kind of go back, and there's a lot of reminiscing, and that one really sticks out to me. And I have to say it's at the top of the list.
That's a great album. That's a really great album.
Thank you.
You got more questions, Darren? Or should we?
Well, they're coming in. I mean, the obvious one I was going to ask is, how many years of your life did you go to bed with the beginning of Summer of '69 running through your head?
Is that a question for me? Because a lot.
For me?
Well, we talked before, because you guys playing with Slash, and you had Lemmy come up, and Slash says to Lemmy, "Hey, let's do Ace of Spades," and he goes, "Fuck you! Why don't we do Sweet Child of Mine?"
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, right? I mean, is that the song that it's kind of that? You must have played that a million times,
Oh, there's Into the Fire on vinyl.
There we go.
On vinyl. Wow.
I got it handy, Keith. It's always close by. This is such a great record.
That's a great record.
What's he looking at is the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's a pizza parlor, he's starving, he wants to get a Do you recognize where it is?
No, where is that?
It's New York.
Oh, it's New York.
New York. Okay.
Oh.
I was going to say New Westminster. No, I'm way off here.
Sorry.
So yeah, is Summer of '69 like that song? Is it the Sweet Home Alabama to Leonard Skinner, or like that song that you kind of like? It's such a great. I mean, there's such brilliant things about the simplicity of a song like that. I could play those opening chords at any show, anytime, whether it's in front of like Wembley or in front of like the local bar, and everybody knows all the words. Everybody knows everything about that song. They know the solo. You know, it's mental.
I think if an artist gets to that point and they have a song that becomes kind of universally known, that's such a bonus. And
oh yeah,
that's the way I've always looked at it. It's like, well,
absolutely. Yeah.
We say the song plays itself because the crowd takes over and sings. And I don't know. I always thought it was kind of a luxury thing that
100%.
That people.
Well, and in your case, I mean, not only can you say, can a song get any bigger, and then you come out and go, yes, it can. Here's the soundtrack to Robin Hood. You know, and all of a sudden it's even bigger, right? I mean, there's, you know, just everything about, you know, those songs. I mean, who doesn't know those, or, you know, who hasn't heard those?
Yeah.
Especially if you knew the background to the recording side and how not only us, but everybody around us, the management, the record company, and how they viewed what you were doing. And specifically, let's start with Summer '69. They went, well, it's just kind of a back end of the album track.
Wow.
Doesn't have a strong chorus. You know, I think it's like the second last song of the record if you look at the listing on Reckless. But they didn't feel that positive about it. But when you go out and you go and tour it, and I think eventually it was released at the end as a single because it was getting such a positive response live. And it had a life of its own, nothing to do with us or anything. It just kind of, it became like an anthem in some ways for that generation. And I don't know why. It's just one of those weird things. We can't explain it. And everything I do is almost the same situation where we were recording a record with Mutt Lange in London. And we'd come to the very end of the session. We'd moved out of Mutt's house in southwest London, which had a big studio. And we moved up into Battery in North London just to keep us more focused and whatever. And this song came in at the very end of the session. It was kind of like, well, let's just throw it on the movie. The film company, I can't remember the name of the film company, but they didn't like the song really, but they didn't have anything else. The song was kind of a theme that Michael Kamen, the composer for the film, had come up with. And he literally sent this cassette that was him whistling over a keyboard going, and that's all it was, 30, 40 seconds of music. And
wow.
We broke for the weekend, and Mutt said, we'll see if we can come up with a middle A for this thing. And he came back on Monday in the studio. Mutt said, did you come up with anything? He said, Bryan, I don't know, not really. I did this. And Mutt says, well, I got this. And he started singing. Well, Corey, you probably know this. And, this dude, there's no lyric. And, you know, and the guy is a special human being musically and everything. So we were like, okay, well, you've got some pieces here. And then they kind of went through the script and threw the lyric together. The space for the solo was the last day, and we were in the control room. We had a sound up, and there was two guys from the film company because they wanted the song that night to give to the
Whoa.
And we were like, this thing is a piece of crap. No one's going to care. I'm just thinking, you know, context with Waking Up the Neighbors, which was very heavy guitar-oriented record.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't fit. And it was, okay, well, we'll go in the film, and that'll be the end of it, and we'll see what happens. And I did the song. I remember these two guys were talking really loud. And I was looking at Mutt, and he could see I was getting really upset that they weren't like giving me my space to kind of, I mean, it's a sensitive moment. You hear these, you know, the root to the four going back, and you're going, oh, this is my David Gilmour moment. I can't wait to go ahead and get into this. We had that kind of sound up and everything, the Comfortably Numb kind of approach. And I thought, this is going to be great. And these guys kept talking, and he says, Mutt to he goes, it's going to be okay. Just relax. You see how irritated I was becoming with these guys. And they were talking about like their racehorses or something. I don't know what they were, you know, it was just so distracting. And anyway, everybody sang the solo. I started it with the first line. Then Mutt said, do for the second line. Bryan went da, or I played the next one. Then Bryan went do. He literally, it was a solo by committee in the top 20 minutes.
Wow!
And it was done. And I played 10 more passes of the same thing, and they, did their magic. But this, my point was that the song was very, it wasn't very highly regarded. It was just a throwaway. And then it came out, and there was no other ballads that summer that from the contenders like Phil Collins and Whitney Houston and all that. So it was like free reign for us. It became kind of a wedding sort of a song.
Oh, it was massive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like, actually, that brings up a question from Jeremy when we're talking about Mutt.
Jeremy White.
I don't know why Jeremy White's not. Maybe he tuned out already. Well, his question was, what piece of direction did Mutt Lange give you? Oh, there he goes.
I can see the question.
Yeah, there you go. So Jeremy is coming on screen with us. Yeah. So anything that any advice that a producer like that would have given you and stuck with you?
I have to say, of any producer I worked with, I've been very fortunate to work with some terrific ones over the years. And he really, in every sense, he stands above everybody that I've worked with. And it's not just how he approached recording and songwriting and all that. It was his humanity, and he really is an exceptional human being to me that I've ever met in the music business. And he's treated me so well, and I learned so much. It's been really difficult to pinpoint anything specific other than just be yourself. And
the ability to whistle solos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
or middle age.
I never seen a human being operate in that kind of capacity before, where he could get no sleep and still be completely functional the next day. And
it's true.
It's something about his lifestyle and what he embraces as part of that. I say it's part of his makeup, his faith, or whatever. I mean, and I've talked to people. I talked to his first wife, Stevie, about him a little bit around that time. And I only thing I can think of, he's very competitive. Like within himself, he wants to create great things. And if anything, the trick is in the details. And there was things that I had to play that I didn't think were physically possible, because he would kind of map them out on the guitar, because he plays guitar to some extent. And he would play, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can physically do that. But after I practiced a little bit and I saw what it was, I was able to get through it. And he just pushed you to be better than you were. And I think that is something that is rare. Like, people come in, they want to make a record quick. They got to make it under budget. All that comes into play. But he didn't care how much time it took, as long as it was great. And I always took that as like, wow, he really cares about what he does. And he was very specific about what kind of clients he worked with, and who he wanted to show who he was, and how he wrote. And I don't know. I worked with some pretty great people in my life, David Foster and Bob Rock and all kinds of great people, and Bob Clearmountain, of course, Jim Vallance. These people were super talented, all of them in their own way. And
of course.
Well, and speaking of greatness, good question coming from Glenn here too is. Always love when Bryan played with Bonnie Raitt, and that's not the one I tried to queue up, but it was Where Did It Go?
That is a classic.
Oh, he must have deleted it. He was saying, what was it like playing with David Bowie?
That must have been something.
Well, being a huge fan as a kid.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I was pretty nervous. When I first band, my high school mates and I got together when I was my senior years of high school, we probably played all of Hunky Dory, all of Man Who Sold the World. And
wow.
I mean, that we were just huge Bowie freaks. And for me, it was Mick Ronson, because he was somebody I really identified with. And so Bruce Fairburn, the producer in Vancouver, was asked to do some tracking with him down in Los Angeles. And I came down with a bass player, Renee Wurst from Vancouver, and Mickey Curry, Brian's drummer, played drums. I can't remember. There might have been another musician on it. I can't remember. And we were just tracking these songs. David had already demoed with the Tin Machine guys, and the label was trying to get him more focused into the mainstream, and that's why they got Bruce Fairbairn involved, who of course had big success with Bon Jovi and Aerosmith and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that's what they were trying to push him more into, that kind of sound. And because the Tin Machine songs that we were learning from were like, it was
nuts.
Great.
I'm sure
it was nuts. It was great, but it was, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You got the wrong guy. I'm a little bit more controlled than that, but I don't think he was happy with it. You know, I think he was just kind of going through it, but it was a real thrill to sit in the room and you're kind of hunkered in and you hear his voice come through the cans. You're like, oh, this is like a weird dream. You know?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Wow.
Being such a fan and all that. So, but yeah, we did 3 songs. I think we did a cover of like a Rolling Stone, a Bob Dylan song.
Wow.
And it didn't, I think it made it that actual recording with some of Mick on it, and I think Mick might have sang it. Oh no, David sang it, and it made it onto Mick Ronson's posthumous record, which came out as Heaven and Hell. So that's the only remnant of it. I think I don't know what happened to the other songs, but it was a real thrill to be in the room with him, and he was an absolute gentleman. I have a great picture of him and I. He said, "I want to learn the chords to the Bob Dylan song," and he sent his assistant out to get a songbook, and there's a picture of us sitting on the studio floor with our guitars looking in the book and going over the changes. I mean, it's just G, A minor, whatever, B minor, C, whatever the verse is.
Right.
There's a picture of me leaning over it. I think it just doesn't seem real.
And we're talking about a lot of the greats and a lot of the greats that we lost, especially, and it brings up a good question here where Paul was saying, you know, read an interview with Eddie Van Halen and named you as one of his guitarists that he liked. Did you ever get a chance to meet Eddie? And what was your take on Eddie as a guitar player, and obviously as such an influence on the guitar world?
Well, you've basically described him. He has been one of the biggest influences for guitar players since the first record came out. And I remember the late 70s, early 80s, I was playing a lot of the clubs around the Vancouver area, and the music seemed to be going more of a punk direction. We say new wave or whatever you want to call it. Guitar, the emphasis wasn't so much on virtuosity. It was more like just playing block chords and stuff. And he was thinking, well, maybe guitar soloing, but per se, is just kind of out the window. And then this record, I think it was a few records that came out that time, but that one really stood out. And you'd go and play in a club, and the DJ would put the cover of "You Really Got Me" and the whole eruption thing. You're like, this is ridiculous. Just the vibe of it, you know. It wasn't it wasn't as though it was harmonically difficult to understand. It was just the whole attitude was so great, you know, and the energy and then the rethinking of how to play rock guitar, and the tapping thing, of course, was, you know, I mean, he says he wasn't the first guy to do it, but he let the world know about it in a great way. Yeah. So, yeah, I can't deny he was an influence on me. I loved how he wrote music, how he put chords together and gave the guitar like free reign. It was like, hey, screw you, I'm going to do what I want, and that whole thing. And I just thought, good for you, man.
Did you guys ever have the opportunity to cross paths?
Yes, we did. We the first time I met him, we had done a show at Madison Square Garden, and him and his brother, the drummer, came, and Alex, and they were having a good time. And, as in those days, you know, he could, but he was really sweet. He's always been really nice to me. I've met him like maybe 3 or 4 times, and he's come to our shows. He loves Bryan singing, so he's a fan. And he's always been very complimentary, and no, I just nothing too musical or anything like that. Just hi, how you doing? Great show. I always heard things after the fact from other people, like, oh, did you know that he was out on the riser by the sound console, losing his shit about your sound? And I said, no, he didn't say anything about the sound. I could, you know. Why would he care? He has the sound, you know. But he liked different things, and he didn't like people that played like him. He liked people that played different things, you know. Like, you know, maybe weren't as flashy. Maybe it was more to the point or something. I don't know. But I have to say, in person, he always treated me very well, and he was very nice. And something came out in an interview where he mentioned my name or something, or mentioned me, and I thought that was pretty nice. But other than that, I couldn't have told you. I mean,
well, I think in a guitar world, that would probably be the best compliment one could probably get, right? I mean, when you get guys like that, I mean,
Yeah, I was surprised, because I didn't think he really noticed, but he did like what we did. We did a show, a tour in 1986. It was Amnesty International, and it was quite a roster. I don't know how we got involved. Bryan got his manager, Bruce, to somehow get to be part of it. And there were 6 concerts, San Francisco, Denver, Atlanta. The last show was in New Jersey outside at the football stadium. And that day was, well, the main roster was U2, Peter Gabriel, Sting with his jazzy solo band with Branford Marsalis and all that.
Right.
There was all kinds of people. Us, we were like a pair of brown shoes at a wedding. What did we do? It was all like really, contentious stuff. The artists that were there, the Neville Brothers, but people would show up. It was like, just kind of all kinds of people, like as guests. Miles Davis was on the last show. Just
wow.
Him and Santana on guitar was sitting in with him, and all kinds of people. But I think Ed had come as a guest to that show, and whatever we did that night, he was knocked out by the sound, and I don't know why. It just for some reason, that's what I heard after the fact, and I thought, okay, well, I can sleep with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I dig that, to hear stories like that, because he's obviously a guitar player, such an appreciator of other guitar players' sounds, techniques. So speaking of all that, what was it like along your journey that you said, I'm going to play like that guy? Like, because you have like a Gilmour-esque kind of, Clapton kind of thing that I always really dig in your playing. And I'm curious to know, who were your guys when you were coming up?
Well, very good point, Al. Clapton for sure. When I started, I think the first actual vinyl record I bought, I was 13, 1967, 68, was Cream, Disraeli Gears, with that amazing cover with all the colors. And I was just starting to get into it. I don't even know if I guess I just had got a cheap guitar from my friend then. Just a little Sears acoustic guitar with the strings that are this high off.
Yeah, we all had that guitar.
And maybe you should to appreciate when you do get a decent instrument. But
exactly,
But that record, that learning to play I called the second generation blues, that all those English greats that
totally
to the great blues, the real blues, and turned it into an amplified, energetic form of it, and we all were the beneficiaries of that. So that's kind of what moved me forward, was people like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, of course, in a different way, but that kind of movement, is because you could, as a beginner, you could sort of harmonically sense what was going on. Oh, that's a pentatonic box. I mean, that's the blues.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to deliver it is another story, but in the same capacity. But
it's a whole other conversation, that thing about, like, if these white kids from England had not discovered the blues, how different would everything be? You know what I mean? Like, it's such a bizarre, because in America, it was largely an African-American blues scene. And those guys all found it, like John Mayall and all those, all Long John Baldry, all those guys were doing the blues, True. And that changed guitar playing 100%. Like, all those guys we just talked about they were all doing the stuff they were hearing on those records. The Stones, all those guys, you know what I mean?
I totally agree. And now, I mean, they're still seeing remnants of it, with people, young kids still trying to. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan was the last sort of real, push for that. And
hey, Keith, I don't know if it's intentional, but your camera keeps drifting. We got half your. There you
go.
Oh, sorry. You kind of had the Todd Kearns borrowing trouble thing going on there. Yeah.
Bless you.
Good reference.
We only had half your face there. There you go.
But guys like Bonamassa, guys like that who are still kind of like, finding new ways to say stuff from that particular thing is always interesting to me. I never really came up on that on the blues per se, more rock and punk rock and stuff like that. But I'm always, when I see guys say a lot within the guitar playing. Did Hendrix have any play on you? Because there was something recently I was watching, and I was like, and there was Hendrix moments. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I could see that now.
I think if you were a guitar player in a big amp, and which we all were, and my first good amp was a Marshall, you wanted to be Jimi Hendrix. You just getting the sound was another story. And it's only through time that, and you research it and you realize, well, it wasn't that complicated from that point of view. It just, it was him playing, of course, and then the fuzz thing, which overdrove the amp to craziness. And just how he controlled that, and the mood of the day. Everything was in context. In 1967, I was 13, 14 years old. My world was upside down. I don't know. I mean, in the prairies is similar, I guess, in some ways. But on the West Coast, the Summer of Love in 1967, Vancouver was the San Francisco of Canada.
Of course.
All the people that lived free like that were living there. A lot of people were coming up from the United States to get away from the draft. There's a whole periphery of musicians in the Vancouver area that were in that situation, like the Girls in Heart and all those people.
I was just talking to Howard Leese about this the other day, because he said say hello to you. He loves your playing.
And he was one of the first guys I met when I just joined this club band, and I met Howard at a party, and he said, I'm American, and I'm working with this band Heart as an extra musician. I've done a bunch of the recording. So he was one of the first people I met in 1974. So
wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
So we've already talked about Mutt Lange, and incidentally, I got a little story. I once asked Mutt who his favorite rock singer was, because he's worked with obviously some of the best, and he said, I have to say that it's got to be Bryan, it's got to be Badams, for sure, Badams. And so that was great. I mean, he's worked with
was that your Mutt Lange voice, or was that your Godfather voice?
No, that was my Mutt Lange voice. Yeah, I have to say that.
On the day of my daughter's wedding.
And incidentally, I know there was an article where Bryan was asked the same question, and he said that his favorite rock singer was Lou Gramm, who also was a Mutt sort of product, or they worked together.
But if you asked Lou years ago, he was complaining about Mutt.
Is that right?
In an interview, he said, making Foreigner 4 destroyed my voice, because he made him do things he used to doing. And like I was explaining earlier about how Mutt would push you, not like in a bad way. He would just see how far you could go to make it better than it was.
Right.
And, we did an open up for Foreigner at the middle of that record tour, and we did about 2 or 3 weeks in the United States, and we were all waiting for the song. I've been waiting for a girl. Yeah. And he'd go up, and maybe 2 of the nights he would go up, I've been waiting. He wouldn't do it. I've been waiting. He'd stay down.
Oh, wow.
Oh, interesting.
Was either way. He just wouldn't go for it, because I don't know if that was something that he was comfortable with. He just couldn't. It was so hard to do.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing that, like, when you look at Def Leppard, I think is probably one of the most interesting examples of Mutt's ability to turn Joe Elliott into the singer that he became, because the first record, he's not going there at all. I mean, he's going there, but he's not like living there. And then by Pyromania, you clearly see that Mutt has created, Joe has this whole other side of himself that comes out, which defines this entire. I'm sure he regrets having to sing all that now too, but
I was going to say, these guys are coming out now going,
yeah. And I know Mutt brought him to tears as well. And he just has a way of doing that. Like he says, I mean, he just has such a high bar, and he expects you to at least try to see his vision through.
Interesting.
And he, his work ethic is such that he doesn't try to push you too hard. He just pushes you to what he's used to for himself. He'll never ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself, working 8 hours or whatever.
I totally agree with you. That makes total sense. And that's what makes it so doable. And because that he's behind you 100%. He doesn't want you to fail. He wants you to try something that's going to be challenging, because let's go to a place where no one's gone before. And there was a lot of comments about, you mentioned the Def Leppard thing, and when I was working with him that first record in his house, and he said, we made two records before Pyromania, and he said, okay, we can spend a few months making the next one, or we can really dig in and spend a lot of money and time, and we can make a Sgt. Pepper's. That's what he was trying to sell them on. Let's just make this as great as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the same for the next record, which took many years because they had some injury thing. The drummer got in the accident, and Mutt got in an accident, and everything got pushed back. And I mean, he was telling me where they ran the master tape in the recording studio. You could almost see through the tape. It was so worn through.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that's how much overdubbing they would do, and they just kept going back, making it great. And that was before the mix. They took it to another level on the mix level. So it takes sometimes years. In those days where you didn't have Pro Tools, you didn't have anything to fix you. You had to play it, even if it meant one note at a time. And a question that I used to get was, I heard a story where he would make you play one string at a time, and that would be a chord. And I said, it never happened. I mean, not to me. I mean, I heard of stuff like that, but no, he just wanted it to be
popular story, because that was one of the questions that was coming up in the next feed. So there's your answer. Yeah.
No, playing one string at a time.
Yeah.
I asked Nigel Green the same question. Do you remember Nigel?
Of course I do.
Yeah. So he's one of my good friends, and I asked him the same question about one string at a time thing. He says, no, not really. He said there was one incident where they had to do some kind of a jangle, and I forget what he said, whether they took other strings off so that they weren't ringing in behind or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't ever like doing a whole chord one note at a time.
We used to put tape on some of the strings to keep them from ringing when you were trying to do some complicated jangle part. Those were the jangly ones. Oh my gosh. They were like, you can see I had my hands. I'm not genetically gifted. I have little pork sausages. So Mutt's fingers are like this.
They are.
Bad.
Whoa. And a lot of great guitar players of our era have very long fingers. Eric Clapton's really long fingers. Alan Holdsworth's fingers were like this long.
Wow. When Hendrix is long, I think Hendrix has had long fingers
as well. If you watch Woodstock, and his thumb
all the way around,
like goes over the neck from the top down. It's like, I mean, okay, I got to work twice as hard. Hence the less notes, whatever. But you referred to David Gilmour earlier about that, and I think I don't remember being a real aficionado of him until about The Wall and all that, where his sound just kind of grew. Yeah. And every record would get even more sophisticated, and like that era with Comfortably Numb and all that was, everybody wanted that solo tone. It was just so emotional. How could you lose with that kind of sound? It was beautiful. Mm-hmm. So I tried to steal from him, and as I have from so many people over the years.
He does say a lot with very little in a way. Like he's another Clapton-esque kind of guy who can do a lot in just a slow bend, and you're like, whoa, I'm feeling that,
And the music sort of dictates that, because it's open, it's musical, it gives you all this sense of melody, it just implies that. So I guess that's what it is, whatever the music implies, you're going to try and fulfill that. So
what I've always wanted to ask you about is during the phase of your career, you've been able to play within having a keyboard player, having that Bryan playing second guitar. Then there was that phase where you guys went down to a 3-piece, which I thought was really cool. Like when Bryan, suddenly he's on a P bass and everybody's wearing white, the amps are all, I just thought it looked like, wow, these guys are punk rock now or something. But I wonder, as a guitar player, I always wonder this, because when I listen to Live at Leeds or Song Remains the Same, when Page or Townsend or whatever goes for a solo type thing, and you don't have that weight. Like when we play with Slash, he will not play really without a second guitar. He needs that sort of support, you know what I mean? So as a guitar player, does it change the game entirely when you're like, I'm going to do my thing, and you have to figure out all those parts as the only guitar player now?
Definitely. When we took that approach, you remember we just came out of working with Mutt, who had so many parts. And
of course.
Even when we were a 5-piece band, I was trying to play 2 or 3 things at once if I could.
Sure.
And with kind of like different sounds. So you're kind of compromising on all of them just to get the right, the mood. And, we had lengthy sound checks with Mutt in those early years, 1992, around then when we'd Waking Up the Neighbors had come out, and he would basically guide you through. He said, don't worry about the little things. Just make the meat of the song come through and find,
Sure.
You can throw one in, that's fine. Don't worry about it. He wasn't putting any pressure on you. But going to the 3-piece, songs from that era, it was a real struggle to try to give the Can't Stop This Thing We Started. You got jangles, you've got rhythm parts, and there's nothing else. There's all this counter melody with keyboard, and it was. I think what I did is I'm just going to try and do it at like Pete Towns would do it, live leads, and to hell with it, and and that's the end of it. And we kind of got away with it. It was only supposed to be for a few months or like a year, and it went for almost 5 years.
Wow, was it that long?
Yeah, 4.5 years, and I begged him to go back to just because.
But think of all the money saved on flights, on hotel rooms. That's the first thing I think of every time when I see that kind of thing. Man, these guys they're brilliant. They're saving money.
As long as Keith got extra money to reflect that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're doing 3 guys' jobs. You should probably get paid twice as much money at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time, it was a lot of outside forces kind
of course, yeah,
pushing on that. Bryan had gone through a relationship that had not gone well, and he was going to shut everything down. So we made this record unplugged, which was really great. Pat Leonard was the producer, and he played keyboard. And how we got to that point was we were soliciting different producers. We solicited the guy that did the Clapton one. I can't remember his name. And then Pat Leonard sent this tape in of a version of Bryan's song, I'm Ready. And it was kind of done in a very kind of folky way. And
it's amazing. Yeah, I love that version. Yeah.
So I thought, this is the nicest version of anything anybody's said so far. So we kept going back and forth. He got involved, but we did that record, and Bryan did not want to tour that record, and he was going through a tough time personally, I think. And he said, all I have to do, I'm going to shut it down for a while and get my life together. I said, no problem, buddy, whatever you want to do. He said, but I have committed to these radio shows in the United States at Christmas time. There was 4 or 5 of them. And if I don't do them, the radio network will never play my songs again.
Oof. Nice.
So it was a bit of a, he said, how about you and I, Mickey, just go down, and it's only for like a half an hour, 40 minutes a night. We go down and play these private radio shows and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, okay, whatever you want. And we went and did it, and just the 3 of us bust our way. He went to the bass, and it was pretty rough in the beginning because you're used to hearing a guy dedicated to that position in the band, and it's really but he was, singing and playing. It's a different animal. Totally
it's challenging. Yeah.
And he was a bit out of sorts for the first little bit, and then he kind of settled in, and he loved it so much. He goes, I'd like to continue on with this. Okay, how long? just for the first half of the year, and then blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. Well, then we just kept going, and the management, everybody wants to see you, blah, 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 and the white clothes and the white Marshall.
it looked bitchin' though. Like it looked like the whole thing. Oh, that's what I kind of dig, is that it was such a realization of like, if we're going to do this, we're going like all in, the look, the thing. And I thought it was, I really, it's one of my favorite phases, as much as I can only imagine the challenge you had to face. And I feel bad for you in that way, because when you see without the keyboards and all that kind of stuff, when I see it now, with the full arrangements, you're like, well, there it is. Of course, it's better because you have all those, the ability to hear everything. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I think after the fact, and I thought about it, I thought, how did we get away with that? But if you go see somebody, even as a spectator or in the audience, you're hearing songs that it's almost like your subconscious can hear those parts anyway.
Of course,
you can hear the voice, and you can hear some kind of beat, and there's some energy from a guitar. You're kind of imagining the parts being there. As long as you get the main vocal and melody, as in our case, because that's what we are, So it's not like Rush where we're playing all these amazing, instrumental pieces.
A couple of questions that are coming in, and we'll try to cover off probably 5 or 6 of them. And people.
So you're not busy for the next 4 hours or anything, right?
No, but it all relates to the same song. And somebody's saying, well, when was the last time you played it? When was it? And then, of course, somebody's saying, well, why is Diana a rare recording to find? What's the significance? And what's the story behind that?
The song Diana?
Why, or why is it such a rare recording to find? And when was the last time you played it? All sorts of things. I mean, I guess a lot of people are loving the song and questioning.
I didn't realize it was that rare.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I think it was like a B-side for a single. So in those days, it was vinyl and maybe a cassette. And I don't know even the premise of the song. I know that Bryan's a fan of her, and he had a personal relationship with her.
Lady Di, we're talking about, yeah. Princess Di, yeah.
That's where the whole premise of it comes.
Yeah. What are you doing with a guy like him?
Yeah, that's what we all wanted to know.
Yeah, we're like, wow,
it's a perfect
slamming Prince Charles.
Yeah.
So imagine when we actually met them in at a Princess Trust, and we were like, "What's he gonna do?"
So to clarify here too, before we're on TMZ, when you said Bryan had a personal relationship, you're just talking like mutual friends, correct? Or was there?
Yeah. No, I don't know anything else about anything.
No,
about
it's the internet now. So you say
it's
Bryan had a personal relationship. Next thing you know, we're on TMZ.
Clickbait. Exactly.
I meant it was
fantastic for our show, but I mean, it's
no, I don't. I just know that they knew each other, and they had talked or whatever. I mean, there was communication. I don't think there was anything weird, but I say weird as in like I don't think it was any romantic thing. I didn't get it.
You don't think?
Yeah. if there was, good on him.
And Bryan would talk about it. I mean, he's just devastated she's not around. And we were doing a gig in Jones Beach, New York, and the news came in that night, and he was devastated. So as you would.
It's a tragedy. Yeah. That's a great song. I didn't realize it was that. I mean, that song felt like a hit to me. I remember that song being huge.
People are putting in the comments just saying, it's almost impossible to find. And
really?
I mean,
Wow.
I'm sure with the internet, I mean, it's out there somewhere, I would imagine. Yeah.
I assume it's someone's got it somewhere. Yeah.
And in Bryan's case, he's like us. We try to emulate who we appreciate, and he loves Paul Rodgers. And I think that was kind of his. I'm going to do my Paul Rodgers on this.
Great. Yeah. Actually, it's funny that you bring that up because I often wondered where Bryan's. Because with a gravelly voice like that, and I was just listening to some of the stuff before we talked here, the live stuff and whatnot. And I'm like, with guys like him or Rod Stewart or any of the guys with the gravelier school, I'm always like, man, I don't know how they can. I mean, Bryan sounds as good today as he did when he was like, a young man. So I'm like, wow. So that's just the way he sings. He opens his mouth and that's what comes out. It's not he's just learned to really work with what he has, and he sounds great.
Well, and it's funny because the comments that you guys always get, and Keith, I don't know if you know this as well, but everybody always says, well, why doesn't Toque do a Bryan Adams song? And they actually have, and Corey took the lead on that. So have you had the opportunity to hear the cover of that?
I think that's pre-Keith, that song.
That's pre-Keith, yeah. So we did Remember.
Oh yeah, that's me for sure.
Yeah. So you have to check out our version. It's on. You can just look it up on YouTube or whatever.
We decided to dig deep. If we're going to do Bryan, it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do? Like everything I do, or it's like there's so many. Like the songs are so huge.
We do play that once in a while. Still,
you do?
Yeah, remember? Blue Moon. He'll just call it. And say,
Oh, right
my God! Does that happen a lot? With when a guy's been around as long as you guys have, do things just get called out, and you're like, you have to have just like 60 songs in your head at all times, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, that can happen. And we've had different bass players for the last several years. So I always encourage them, listen, you probably want to at least get the key of these songs in your head. Can you fudge your way through it? But the last few years before we stopped last March, Bryan had a feature in the show where he said, ask me any song.
Oh, no.
And once the word got out, people would bring signs saying, can you play this? And the first thing I would do when I walked out on stage was Look for the signs. Oh, shit, what's that song? What's the key? It's like some obscure song off on A Day Like Today or 11 or something.
Oh.
You know, you think,
Wow.
And then you get to like, you're sweating like, holy shit. And then he'd say, oh, there's somebody, that song. And literally by some miracle of providence, and then you knew whether, you could hear it in your head, it would the minor sec or whatever it went, and somehow I got bailed out, and but that was terrifying.
Would it be the full song, or was it the full song, or would you just kind of go to a point and then be like,
yeah, we do like a verse of the chorus, because he was soliciting different people.
I was going to say, because would that be pre-teleprompters? I mean, how do you remember the words to all those songs? Like,
he gets a teleprompter, I get Jack, so. And I'm
maybe one day, once you put in, a couple more years, I'm sure you'll get your own.
Yeah, not quite there yet, Keith.
Yeah, we got to go down to a 3-piece before they'll give it to you.
But talk about success as a Canadian artist, and let's just go back for a second to Reckless, which, from my understanding, is the first rock record to sell 1 million copies, go diamond, and if I'm not mistaken, told to me my good buddy Bob Roper, who might be watching, the first album to actually recoup from a record perspective in Canada. What was the success? What was the success like back then? I mean, what was the feeling of riding that high?
People ask me that, and we didn't know. We had so much work to do. You just wanted to get everything done. You knew that you had to make a record. You had no idea, like I said about Summer '69, it's just a song. Mm-hmm. I think the first single off the song was Run to You, and it was received moderately, and Heaven got to #1. It was part of a film that came out and did nothing, and we re-released it, put it on that record, and it went to #1. So, shoot. So we had no idea. It was all the machinery behind the actual going out on tour and headlining or whatever you're doing, opening up for people, and you didn't even notice anything about success. You're like, it's good. Let's move up the chart. Great. That means we can do more gigs, or that means we can tour next year, or that means we can do another record. You don't have any idea how long it's going to last. And I can tell you right now, when I started in 1981, I would never have imagined to get 10, 20 years, never mind 40 years working almost exclusively with one artist. It just doesn't seem like, first of all, the time's gone so fast. And I just think we're, the whole generation, there was so much focus on that particular idea about being in a band and going on tour and playing concerts and going to concerts, and it hasn't really left us. People are still doing it in mass. And I think my own kids, they probably won't see the same idea. It'll be completely different, but
that's true. Yeah,
we were so fortunate, and a bunch of things happened at that time for us. If you talk to anybody in a record label in the early 80s, they'd say, well, you're going to make a record, and then you make another one, and then you'll move from clubs to small theaters. And then you're going to open up for people, and you make another record. So by the time you're ready to headline, you're looking at like 5 to 10 years and 4 or 5 records. Well, we were very lucky. I got involved with Cuts Like a Knife. We were headlining our own shows 3 years later, which is like, but there was reasons for that, I think. And well, first of all, just Bryan and Jim being writers, they were well established. They had a lot of material to back them up. They knew what the process was for making that happen. And MTV came into play right around then. And that shortened your career arc by several years, because all of a sudden you could promote yourself visually in a capacity that had never been seen before, outside of just doing the regular TV shows like Saturday Night Live or whatever was available, Solid Gold or whatever they could find to tell specifically the American public and maybe Europe that you were who you were. That was the biggest challenge, was getting into media. It wasn't just radio. It was physically, I like it. Like you say, you saw Bryan in 1983 in the Jubilee Theater or whatever, opening for Loverboy. You thought, this guy, he's got all this energy. That's the kind of impact you wanted to make on people, so they would possibly come back and see you again. And it was all part of this mechanism and being involved and watching all these new entities come into play like MTV and radio being kind of syndicated, where playlists, if you got on a playlist, you got reached way more people. It was just a formula, a kind of thing that pushed your career forward. And we were just lucky to time it. And then Bryan always says, if we released record either a year later, Reckless, a year later or a year earlier, we would have never had the same success. It was complete timing. And prior to that, for Cuts Like a Knife, we were really lucky to get an opening slot with the band Journey in the United States. And we went from March until August. And they were at the peak of their career. They were probably the biggest arena act in America.
Right.
And you'd go and play, Corey, it's probably like Shania when she was doing like 5 nights in one place. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, and you go and you play the Reunion in Dallas for 5 nights. You go and play the Forum for 7 nights. You play Madison Square Garden for 4 nights, opening up. You're going to see so much more of your audience. And that, I think, did more than anything in the early 80s to get us on board down south,
That's amazing.
So can you pinpoint over your career, is there a highlight that stands out? We had Pat on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking the same thing about, favorite shows. So aside from playing with Sporty Spice, is there a show or a moment in time that stands out for you?
Oh, gosh.
I'm sure they all must. Live Aid was a pretty big deal, stuff like that.
Yeah, at the time, I don't have, that real significant memory of Live Aid, because we kind of were in the middle of a tour. We came in, we got up early in the morning to do it. We left right after we did our show, it was around noon. It was in the summer, and we went and did our own show in Ohio. We took off. We didn't get to stick around and kind of soak up what was really going on. So it was like you don't really get a chance to enjoy or drink up what you've done. You've got something ahead of you to take care of.
And you didn't realize the significance while doing it too, right?
No, of course not. Yeah.
It was like, we got to go do this. We're supposed to go tour. It was like almost like an inconvenience, but not really. I mean, you could see
it's a gig,
the magnitude of it, And even like the Amnesty tour in '86 was, what are we doing here? But then years later, you can get a better sense of what the experience was and what it meant. It might have been aggravating at times, but it was a real opportunity and a life experience, because I can just take my brain back to there and go, I know exactly what I was thinking then and what I was doing. And it was interesting times. I mean, and again, we've been lucky to have so many crazy ass experience in our career. And Bryan drives a lot of it. He's like Mutt. Mutt respects his voice, but they're a lot alike. And Mutt used to say that to me all the time. Adams reminds me, he's really, I'm going to go to my South African voice. It reminds me of when I was younger, man. He's really,
Perfect.
And because I think he had a real personal, so he could relate to Bryan, as a young singer. And Mutt is a terrific singer. That guy is unbelievable singer. So, but he likes the idea of someone's character. And I was going to say also, you were talking about Bryan singing, and he can mimic almost anyone. It's ridiculous.
Really? Wow.
He'll do Joe Cocker in a heartbeat.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
He does.
I'd love to hear that.
He does Ray Charles. He can do Ray Charles. It's freaky how good it is.
Wow.
He does Tina Turner. He does that. He's an incredible mimic. But it's not like, oh, that's a joke. Okay, that's scary. That's too good.
Wow.
He's a really incredible gift there, and he's had it since he was a kid. And I remember meeting him. I'll talk about this because a lot of people ask me, how did you meet Bryan? And I say, okay. And I heard about him through a mutual friend. I was in a club band in Toronto. We were kind of doing all the clubs. We had some original music. We were trying to get people interested in it. And one of the guys in our entourage said, oh, do you know this cat, Bryan Adams? He's filling in for the singer of Sweeney Todd, Nick Gilder, because he's gone on to create a solo career. I said, no, I'd heard the name because I know lots of people in Vancouver that talk about him. He said, well, he really wants to meet you. He's a fan. I said, okay, well, let's go have lunch. And we went up in this little diner in Toronto, and he was bouncing off the walls. The energy, it was, I don't think I'd met anybody like that at the time. And you could see that he had the energy, at least, if I wasn't familiar with his talent as much as not until I started to work with him, and the drive, he just never gave up. The first few months we were on tour, and we were touring in Toronto area, trying to promote this record, and I roomed with him, and it was like crazy. He was on the phone up at first thing in the morning, on the phone, phoning the next city radio stations. Are you playing my record? Are you playing my? Come on, man! Come on, get on the board. We're taking. He was like,
wow.
He was not going to let up. He pushed and pushed and pushed, and he was driven. And that, I think more than anything, that's going to at least get your foot in the door. Never mind that what your music, your talent, or whatever. You got to keep pushing. And
what do you think is the secret? The fact that you guys have been together for so long, and I think of it in terms of like, Mike Campbell to Tom Petty. That kind of like hearing a Bryan Adams song without your guitar would be really weird. Like if it was just like some other guy playing guitar, I'd be like, well, that's not Keith. So, I mean, but the fact that like he really, obviously whenever he makes music, it's kind of like, well, Keith is going to be on this song. And is it the lesson of like being a musician is so much about the hang as it is about your ability? You know what I mean? Like if Keith Scott was a great guitar player, but he was a dick, you might, might not, but I think, is it the fact that you guys just can get along and can have this sort of like ability to hang all these years?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, but those are good ones. I mean, the ability
Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. I think that's
hopefully I've been a dick. I can't deny it.
Well, we all have. Yeah.
And it's it's part of the learning process. But I mean, there's been many cases where it's Bryan on guitar. It's not me. So
right.
he'll try to do as much as he can because he can play guitar, and because he's melodically, he's oriented that way. He comes up with great parts. And his rhythm playing is terrific. He's might call him. He had a name for it, Reggie Wrist or something. Because his rhythm he swings. And Corey, you can probably tell that Mutt's swing is so unique. When he does his shuffles, it's so unlike what I have used to be shuffled. I'm like the Chicago bear, and it's real draggy. Mutt's has this energy. It's where you emphasize the beat within the shuffle, and it took me a long time to even get a smidgen of what it was. And what does he hand me? One of the first songs to record was "Can't Stop" Shuffle. It's like, and his shuffle is so unusual and unique, but it swings like a mofo. And he has his own way of hearing it. And I'm just like hanging on for dear life. And just, geez, I'm not getting it. I'm dancing around and shit. I'm not getting it. But he's so patient. He's amazing that way. And there's a way, everybody hears things differently. And he heard a shuffle that way. And it was incredible. And Bryan has a great shuffle. So, I say Bryan is tribute to a lot of the stuff, and at the demo stage, especially the early records like Cuts Like a Knife and Reckless and Into the Fire, Bryan and Jim would be writing at Jim's studio in his house, and I'd get a call at 11 o'clock at night because I lived 10-minute drive away from them and in Vancouver, and he'd say, "We just finished this cool song. Come over and play a solo." I said, "What's 11?" And so you drag your ass and you go play and you hear this amazing track, and you half asleep, you'd play a couple of notes, and that would be your template guide to when you went to go track the song for real, if you decided to track that song. And
wow,
that's kind of how a lot of things got started. But initially, Bryan would do as much as he physically could ahead of time, and some things stuck. There's a song called "This Time" from Cuts Like a Knife.
Sure, yeah.
The whole melody line, it's all him. It's just, and he's played. I think I came in the very last chorus because I slept.
Oh, okay.
But
wow,
but he can play. He's amazing that way. So
one time I went to the studio. I used to did some stuff with Bob Rock back in the day. Mm-hmm. So I went to visit Bob at the warehouse when you guys were doing that record, and I'm just standing in the lobby with Bob, and Bryan walks in and he goes, "Come up, hear a song." Bryan was always really cool that way. He'd be like, "Okay." I don't want to go in and like crash people's sessions, but it was a mixing session. They played the song, and it was like, I don't even remember what song it was. It was just so like overwhelmingly a song I never heard before. And I remember being like, whoa. And I'd known Bob to be such an alpha male. Like he was always the biggest dog in the room, and he would bark, and not so much bark, but he was just kind of like, you were always very sort of, yes, sir. You were always very sort of like, okay, right. And then but it was so interesting watching Bob. And then after they finished, they played the track, and then they were talking about like what was left to do. And he said, well, we got to finish that one song. And I remember Bryan just very casually going, nah, I dropped that song. Just very, and I just sort of went like, wow, he's a bigger dog than that dog. You know, I just got this moment where, and Bryan wasn't barking. He was just sort of like, nah, just sort of like, and I remember Bob being kind of like, but we worked so hard on that song. And he was kind of like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Or however he said it. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I remember just being like, wow, like you just saw this sort of like that guy's the real Jedi in the room here. You know what I mean? But Bob's an amazing dude, an amazing talent.
You were working on that Irish Rovers record, right?
yes, of course, yeah.
My friend, do you know Craig Northey? I'm sure you
Of course, love Craig Northey. What a talent!
Yeah, he's a very good friend of mine, and I've known him for a long, long time. And he sent me a mashup today of what was the track? It was Huey Lewis.
Yeah, and Metallica. Yeah,
and Metallica on top.
It's incredible. Yeah.
But I've known, of course, Bob for years, and since I moved south, especially, he would invite me up to lots of sessions in Los Angeles, and get to record with him. And he's just a great guy, and he's a good, dear friend.
Uber talent, great guitar player, underrated guitar player, actually.
Yes. You worked with Bob and Jann together, Jann Arden, right?
Yep, we did. I've done 3 records with Jann. It started with a covers record, and Bob produced all of them. I think Dave Pierce, Dave Pierce from Calgary. He's a producer too and writer guy.
Anyway, Jann, I was texting with Jann before we went on today, and I said you're the guest, and so she said to say hi. She loves you.
I love her too.
Yeah,
the finest humans to grace the planet. She is.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah, exactly.
She's one of our favorite guests, actually. She's super.
Was she funny?
Oh my God, was she funny? Nah.
Amazing.
She's never funny.
I tell you, I did those tours with her, and she had a name. She called me Giggles McSquiggles. You laugh at everything I say. I said, you are the funniest person I've ever met in my life. Oh my God. You would just kill it 24/7. She was funny. I just love her to death. She was amazing.
Yeah, totally.
That is fantastic. Well, we've taken up a lot of your time today, but there are some questions that, of course, we're going to end on. And of course, given the year 2020 and everything that's come along, where are you guys at now? What was the plan? And if there was one, where do you continue on? What's the plan going forward now? Is there anything that everybody can look forward to, or?
I think looking forward, there's lots of good things. We're going to get around all this at some point. It's going to be different, of course, but in our case, majority of what we do is live performance. So obviously that's off the table, and there's not much we can do about it. And this is the longest break we've had in quite a long time. Right now, Bryan and Mutt have actually been working together.
All right.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to actually try to do remote solo tracking tonight with Mutt and Ola as engineer. So it's the first time I've been in contact. So, and I haven't seen Mutt in 15, 20 years. I haven't worked with him for almost 25. So it'll be interesting.
Wow.
And I'm looking
Please say hi. Please say hi for me.
I promise I will. And as far as touring goes, I talked to Bryan last week, and he said we've got dates tentatively booked, but I don't think they're going to happen because they're overseas and the protocols are still strict. And I don't know. It's a tough time to even anticipate,
Yeah.
What's the future? Are people going to be able to go out for a while? Maybe not for another year, or who knows? But I hope not. I hope that, like you say,
do you qualify for the over 65 vaccinations?
I certainly do, and I'm waiting.
Hit it. Jump on that.
Get on that website.
I am a senior citizen here, so
I would never guess that. You look the same as you always did.
I'll be 67 in July, so
that's
I'm gonna look like Abe Vigoda by then. You know that.
Come on, you're all drinking that Lanigan water we talked about.
Abe Vigoda with a wig on.
Thank you guys again for showing the interest, and I don't normally do many. I know I pushed you off, Corey, until the new year because at the time when you asked me, I was not feeling confident about talking about things. I think it's just the general sense. It was pretty hard.
We're only halfway there.
Sorry. It was hard to be positive at the time, and I just thought I did one with a friend of mine, Steve Dawson, a podcast with him earlier in the year, and it got pushed back because of COVID. And I enjoy talking about it because a lot of people don't know the stories and they don't know the behind the scenes. And I'm interested in that stuff with my musical heroes, and I want to know the stories too. So it's important to at least talk about it and share some of it. So most of it's really great and fun stuff, and we were just lucky to be able to do it. So.
That is fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, we so much appreciate you being with us, and of course appreciate everybody for tuning in. Our show Tuesday at 2, Toque Talk. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to click the stars button and help us continue to do this, because who knows when you guys are going to be back out on stage, right? So we enjoyed talking to you, and it's been fantastic. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 2:00.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Everybody.
Stay safe and well, and all the best. Good luck, and hopefully we'll be playing soon.
Absolutely, brother.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Big
everybody.
love, y'all.
Bye.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks again.